This is the iPhone 17, and for most people, this is probably the best phone to choose if you're looking for a new iPhone. While it might not have all the features that the Pro has, the 17 took a big leap forward, and there really isn't a huge difference anymore. You get a brand new display that enables more Pro features, a new ultra-wide and front-facing camera. It actually outperforms the iPhone 16 Pro from last year, and it does have some intangibles that the Pro just doesn't give you. This year more than ever, I think most people should definitely consider this model over any others, and today we're going to dig into all the details with this phone. What's great about it, a couple areas that it could be improved, and a few things that not a lot of people are talking about. So with that said, let's get into it. This video is sponsored by RHINOSHIELD. Hey everyone, Kyle Erickson here. It seems like every year the regular iPhone comes out, Apple limits it just enough so that it makes you want to buy the Pro iPhone. It's always had one less camera, it might be missing a couple of features, and especially for the past few years, it's felt like the display is a big downgrade, not just from the Pro iPhone, but pretty much every other phone out there. But this year things are very different. For starters, while the design does look the same as the iPhone 16, the 17 is just a hair taller this year and is 7 grams heavier at 177 grams. That is likely to accommodate for everything new inside here, but holding it in your hands, it basically feels the same as the 16, but it is much more comfortable to hold than the 17 Pro that weighs in at 206 grams. The 17 Pro also has more of a bold, aggressive look to it. I do like it a lot myself, but it's not for everyone. And the iPhone 17 is just a nice, clean, minimal-looking phone. My only complaint this year are the colors. Unlike the 16 series, where you got this really nice, vibrant color selection, Apple chose to go back to a more muted palette with black, white, lavender, mist blue, and sage green. I was considering going with green, but I ended up just sticking with black. I've always really liked the way that black blends in with the screen bezels, which you will notice are a lot smaller this year to make room for probably the best new thing about this phone: the display. Apple finally got rid of the 60Hz panel in the iPhone lineup, where the 17 now has a 120Hz ProMotion display that has a max brightness of 3000 nits outdoors, or 1000 nits indoors with SDR content, which is the exact same one that's in the iPhone 17 Pro. Looking at the picture, watching content or playing games on here looks excellent. You get bright, vibrant colors, deep blacks, and darker scenes are quite viewable, which does tend to be an issue on some mobile OLED panels. Because this is a variable refresh rate, not only is the higher refresh rate better for smooth gaming, but with content, the phone is able to drop down to match the refresh rate to the frame rate of the video. So motion does look a bit nicer, and because this can go all the way down to 1 Hz, it finally enables the always-on display on the regular iPhone, which is far overdue in my opinion. Also, like all iPhones, the color accuracy is fantastic, making the 17 great for editing photos and getting realistic color representation. And you do have a new anti-reflective coating on here, which, like I mentioned last week, does make the picture feel like there's a bit more depth than usual. That coating is definitely noticeable compared to previous iPhones, especially in daylight, where combined with the added brightness makes this much more viewable outside on sunny days, but it's not quite on the level of the Samsung S25 Ultra, which I was kind of hoping for, but it's still pretty good nonetheless. That screen also has the new Ceramic Shield 2 coating that's supposed to be up to 3 times more scratch resistant this year. I'm not gonna test that here, but Jerry Rig Everything did confirm that this is the strongest that's been put in an iPhone, so that is great news for long-term durability. I've never really had an issue on the 16 series with scratches, but I did actually shatter the screen on my iPhone 16 Pro last year using an official Apple silicone case. It just fell harmlessly from my pocket while I was on a run and cracked, and even if you look at the new tech woven cases, you don't get much protection, so I would definitely think about third-party options there. A couple of years ago on the channel, I had some RHINOSHIELD ones on my 15 and 15 Pro that you guys might remember. Those were fantastic, and that's what I've gone back to with the 17. This one is the new seaweed green iPhone 17 Solid X case that has the same classic RHINOSHIELD design, but it's upgraded to absorb 71% of impact force while staying slim and super lightweight. It feels protective without making your phone bulky, which is a nice balance. If you're looking for more of a clean look, the clear cases have a lifetime anti-yellowing guarantee, and they weigh the equivalent of just 7 sheets of A4 paper. So you barely notice them on your phone, and if you like switching things up, the Mod NX case allows you to swap out the bumper and the back plates whenever you feel like changing your style. You can also pair any of these up with the Impact Pro screen protector, which is great. That looks like glass but holds up like plastic, and if you buy an iPhone 17 case, right now you'll get 40% off screen protectors and lens covers. And you can use my code KYLE10 for an extra 10% off your order through the link below. That is all fantastic stuff, and I do prefer the camera control button on these cases. I wasn't a huge fan of that button last year, and I still don't really use the capacitive touch features on it, but it has grown on me for things like launching the camera app and taking photos, and just speaking to the camera, you've got some pretty big upgrades there too. The camera system retains the pill-shaped island from the 16, and you do have the same main lens with an f1.6 48 megapixel sensor, but the ultra-wide goes from 12 megapixels last year to 48 this year with an f2.2 aperture and does match the Pro model. So again, this is just another area where you see more parity with the Pro. The photos coming off of those lenses look fantastic, where you get great color and dynamic range on both. Just like last year, you've got your photographic styles if you want to add a filter or a different look to your photos, where Apple has added a new bright style that's supposed to add more contrast, enhance foliage, and lighten faces while preserving highlights, but I'm fine just sticking with the standard mode most of the time. I would say that the main lens photos aren't much different from the iPhone 16, but that ultra-wide is quite an upgrade. You just get a lot more detail and sharpness, although it still isn't the greatest for low light, but still a huge jump up from last year. Another huge jump was on the front-facing camera, which I don't normally talk about, but this is pretty neat. The sensor in here is 18 megapixels and is square, and what that does is allow you to shoot both portrait and landscape photos and videos from it without rotating your phone. It also uses center stage, which is supposed to use AI to auto-detect who is in the scene and auto-rotate it for you. I found that to be hit or miss, but it's pretty easy to adjust yourself, and the quality of that lens has improved dramatically. The picture is very clean for a selfie camera without much noise, and the stabilization has also improved on here quite a bit. My only minor complaint with it is in the new dual capture feature. You'll see that if I go turn that on in the camera app, when I record a video, it'll record both the front and rear cameras at the same time. The front camera is just in this little window, which in itself is kind of a cool feature, but if the phone is close to your face, the framing is a bit weird and feels a little awkward. That being said, I doubt I'd ever use that much outside of testing, and the standard video modes do produce excellent results. You can still shoot spatial content for the Vision Pro, the stabilization is outstanding, and while the Pro models do have more format options and ProRes, for 95% of people, the video quality here is more than enough. I started this channel on a lot worse camera than this, and you can get a ton out of this system. A big reason why this produces such great results with photos and videos is due to what powers everything here. That is the new A19 chip, and performance-wise, this thing is an absolute beast. Comparing it to last year's A18 Pro chip that's in the iPhone 16 Pro, this is about 10 to 15% better in CPU benchmarks, which is impressive on paper, but in real-world testing, you likely won't notice much difference over the last couple of generations. iOS 26 has been very snappy, where the only issues that I've experienced are mostly little styling bugs that Apple needs to work out in the new design system, but having used iOS 26 for a couple of months on my other devices, you really can't feel any difference. Hopefully, at some point, we'll get a more advanced contextual Siri, but Apple does have some actual useful AI features with shortcuts and visual intelligence that work really well here. I did a video going over some of that stuff a couple of weeks ago that I will link in the description, but if you're in apps like Lightroom, video editing apps, and that sort of thing, the 17 runs very smooth without any hiccups, and it does stay relatively cool while doing most resource-heavy tasks. Stress testing it will warm up considerably, where temperatures rise until it hits about 46 degrees Celsius and then stabilizes. That matches most other flagships with decent heat dissipation, but in all likelihood, there are very few instances where you'll be putting your phone under that much pressure. On the GPU side of things, you do get a whopping 40% better scores and benchmarks over the previous generation, where gaming performance has been outstanding. I can play AAA console quality titles on here without a hitch, and games that struggle on some flagships, like Genshin Impact or Wuthering Waves, are super smooth with no frame drops or stutter. And some titles that were previously capped by the 60Hz display in the iPhone 16 are now insanely fluid on the 17's 120Hz Pro Motion screen. Using both this wired backbone controller and an Xbox controller wirelessly have been great without any issues, and in terms of connectivity, you do have some updates there as well. The USB-C port still has a USB 2 data transfer speed, which isn't the greatest by any means. That is starting to feel long in the tooth, but I don't know that many people are doing wired data transfers on their iPhones. Chances are, if you are transferring anything, it's probably going to be wirelessly through iCloud or AirDrop. And with AirDrop specifically, the iPhone 17 lineup as a whole has been much better for me than in previous years. AirDrop has always been fine for me when I try and share small to medium-sized files, but whenever I try to transfer a large amount of data, say if I just recorded a bunch of video where I want to transfer at least a few gigabytes, the transfer would often lock up or fail, and I haven't had that experience with any of the new models. They do take a little while to transfer, but I've had far less issues with it, which has been quite nice to work with. And that may be in large part because this is the first phone with Apple's new N1 networking processor that handles Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth 6, and Thread support. With Wi-Fi specifically, speeds have been fantastic, where I've seen no drops or dips in network connectivity, and it is nice to be future-proofed with Bluetooth 6, although the only real Bluetooth 6 devices that I currently have are other phones, but that is supposed to have better latency, updates to security, device tracking, and location services, and be more power efficient as well. Speaking of power, the battery life is another area where Apple claims the iPhone 17 is much better, with up to 30 hours of video playback, which is about 8 hours more than the 16, and in my own testing, I would say that it has been slightly better than the 16, but not by a crazy amount. I've been hammering on this all day between social media apps, shooting photos and videos, gaming, and consuming content, and it lasts a full day with fairly heavy use. And if I just use it more casually like I would on a normal day without gaming or testing, I finish the day with about 40% battery life left, which is pretty good considering that you do have a display in here that likely does consume more energy than last year. Now, that could change as the new adaptive power setting learns my usage, so we'll see how this goes over time, but just don't expect this to be head and shoulders above the 16 or the 16 Pro by any means. Something equally notable, I would say, would be when it comes to charging, where Apple says that you can get a 50% charge in 20 minutes with a 40-watt charger, where previous models were 50% in 30 minutes, and I have found that I can go from about a 0 to 70% charge in about a half hour. Wireless charging is still at 25 watts and warms up only slightly, so definitely nothing that I'd be overly concerned with. Finally, we gotta mention the price because this is probably one of the most notable benefits you get this year. The base model that I have still costs $799 USD or $11.29 Canadian, just like it did for the iPhone 16 when it was new, but the 17 starts with 256 gigs of storage instead of 128, and combined with all the other features that you get here, that's an insane amount of value. In fact, I think value itself is what makes this truly better than the iPhone 17 Pro. Sure, you do get an extra camera lens, it is slightly better for photos and videos with more pro shooting modes, as is chip performance, but now more than ever, these really aren't that different. Outside of those few features and having a couple different color options, I don't think that the average person will really notice any difference. And if you combine that with the fact that the iPhone 17 is lighter and more comfortable to hold and use, and that it's a whopping $300 less than the Pro model, this just seems like a better choice for most folks. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but you guys can let me know how you feel about the 17 in the comments down below, but if there's one takeaway I've got from using this phone over the last 10 days or so, it's that Apple has finally given the regular iPhone the upgrade it deserves. With that being said, I am going to be doing my 17 Pro review next week and the Air the week after, so stay tuned for those, but that's all I've got for you today. Be sure to check out those RHINOSHIELD cases if you're looking for one. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to hit that like button. If you want to see more tech-related content, or help me build an app that uses the iPhone 17 Pro's new camera bump as a landing pad for tiny drones, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next upload.